In the year 1999, Rage Against the Machine got in some good trouble, as Wall Street raked in record profits, coupled with record layoffs. Rage performed.
We're filming on Wall Street, and we have a permit to film on the federal steps.
Okay.
We do not have a permit to film on the city sidewalk. You're
kidding me.
So we're rocking on the steps, and as for listeners who may not know, when bands are making music videos, they're not really playing.
Right.
There's playback happening. It's like a CD or something, and you're miming along. Just so that's important later. So we're playing on the federal steps, and Michael gives one direction to the band. He says, "No matter what happens, don't stop playing. No matter what." So I'm like, that's easy to remember.
Guitarist Tom Morello, speaking of legendary director Michael Moore here, the same man who did Fahrenheit 9/11, Bowling for Columbine, and much more. At Occupy Wall Street, Morello spoke further.
The country and the planet is owned and run by people who don't deserve to. They do it in the name of profit. They do it in the name of privilege. They do it at the expense of human rights and at the expense of environmental rights. What you're seeing in the currently 1,300 cities, towns, and hamlets across the world that are being occupied is people across the spectrum who do not feel represented by their corporate masters.
Thus, the scenes in Rage's Sleep Now in the Fire music video are completely authentic. It was a seismic move at the time that encapsulated capitalistic greed with American suffering. The crowd shots, not staged. The NYPD demanding the band cease playing, real.
So we're up there on the steps and we're rocking out, we're filming the video, it's going very, very well. Some befuddled Wall Street traders are walking by, and then Mike says, okay, now we're going to play on the sidewalk where we don't have a permit to play. But ringing in our ears is, no matter what happens, don't stop miming, okay? So we go down on the sidewalk. As soon as we're down on the sidewalk, a New York City police officer comes up and he says, "You can't play on the sidewalk, you gotta get back on the stairs." And I'm like, well, thinking to myself, Mike's my director today, you're not the boss of me. So
Years later, Morello would reflect to the audience at the Troubadour, legendary venue, by the way. Thus, the scenes played out as such. Moore is yelled at by an officer. The cops try getting in front of the cameras. More officers are called to the stock exchange, but Rage plays on after being demanded to stop, and doing so with a grin on their faces.
And so he's like, "Get back on the steps right now! Back on the steps! Everybody on the steps!" Now he's pissed. The vein comes. Cop vein. There's a cop vein that shows on the neck, comes out.
But you can see the pulse happening.
You can see the pulse, and I'm clearly defying him, and we are playing when he's saying not to play, and so he reaches down and he unplugs my guitar. And of course the music does not stop.
That's fantastic.
And he recoils with a slow horror of someone who's like in the presence of a warlock. And he unplugs Timmy's bass.
Nothing's
and he
happening.
can't believe what's happened. Like,
Moore would be placed in handcuffs and arrested. You could see drummer Brad Wilk look over, but they remember the director's strict commands. Don't stop playing.
and he dragged his ass off the chair. You can see it in the video. It's like Michael being led away in handcuffs. And over his shoulders, Michael's being led away up the stairs. He says, "Take the New York Stock Exchange." So Brad and I, followed by the cameraman who didn't know, no one had any instructions, we run into the New York Stock Exchange. There's this nice guy, I'm sure, making minimum wage in this sort of ill-fitting outfit who's supposed to check the guests. And I said, "Sir, I'm here to take the New York Stock Exchange. Which direction do I go?" And he did his job well and called security.
Which is exactly what happened. Rage's members would enter but be reprimanded viciously by the NYPD, pushed, shoved, and much more. However, a mission was accomplished. Prior to the video's release, the Wisconsin State Journal wrote Moore was manhandled, and as members of the band entered the exchange, security hit the alarm. Metal bars quickly slammed down, sealing off the area. Moore would say, for a few minutes, Rage Against the Machine was able to essentially shut down American capitalism, an act that I am sure tens of thousands of downsized citizens would cheer. The Buffalo News' Anthony Violenti would write, "It was shades of the 1960s, when Jerry Rubin and Abby Hoffman stood in the balcony, tearing up money and throwing it down on the floor of the New York Stock Exchange."
And for the only time in the entire history of the New York Stock Exchange, Capitalism ground to a halt on a Tuesday afternoon, thanks to Michael Moore.
Morello would reflect, in retrospect, it felt like a historic victory against evil, but on the day, it felt so chaotic because our director was in jail. We were supposed to film a video that day, and we're like, we've lost the director. Well, we did sort of shut down the stock exchange, but did we go back to the hotel? But at the end of the day, it was a pretty spectacular, historic rock and roll thing we made. They don't make them like that anymore. The song, Sleep Now in the Fire, was quite simple, with visuals emulating Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, a famous show at the time, with societal ills displayed through questions in the setting. It is a damning indictment that to this day is yet to change and progress the world forward. The numbers have not changed for the better, and in fact have gotten worse. It is simply symbolic of American corporate greed, wealth, and capitalism.
A band called The Machine Rages On, or Rage Against the Machine played. That band is anti-family, it's pro-cop killer, and it's pro-terrorist.
Look no further than the 2000 GOP presidential candidates. Breaking down the lyrics of the song, Abdul Aziz Turhan Kariko would write, "We hear Jesus bless me with his future." This line is about a book by Max Weber, Capitalism and the Protestant Ethics, how religion is connected in supporting and spreading capitalism. Then we hear, "And I protect it with fire," which means I will protect my assets even with force if necessary, and with fire I will burn books or information about my greed. So raise your fists and march around, just don't take what you need. I'll jail and bury those committed and smother the rest in greed. It's rather simple. Protest if you wish. Just don't do anything more than march, or else you will be buried as we uphold the status quo, including the deploying of troops to protect the capitalist state. Abdul Kariko would take the next two lines, "Crawl with me into tomorrow or I'll drag you to your grave," which means I won't even hesitate to kill you to protect our assets/wealth. This verse is ended with, "I'm deep inside your children, they'll betray you in my name." That can be interpreted as any possible changes on not to become greedy will be too late because their children will already be following the capitalist. Even amongst families, greed will make them betray others as if it's natural. One of the hardest verses is the pre-chorus where Zach De La Rocha goes, "I am the Nina, the Pinta, the Santa Maria, the Newsan, the rapist, the fields overseer, the agents of Orange, the priests of Hiroshima, the cost of my desire, sleep now in the fire." From Steve Dowdle, De La Rocha hits additional points alluding to the atrocities of Agent Orange, declaring the nuclear annihilation of civilians as a holy choice, hence priests of Hiroshima, and the twin terrors of physical and sexual slavery. His invocations of these deep-seated sins of capitalism are sharp, but when coupled with the fact that this voice of the system isn't trying to hide behind anything, that is, he isn't trying to justify atrocity because of the eventual bottom line benefits, it puts the critique into an uncomfortable focus. If capitalism were honest, would we support it? Or is it too strong, too deep, too insistent? What's the cost of our desire? Are we truly sleeping in the fire? At the end of the video, it reads, at 2:52 p.m. in the middle of the trading day, the stock exchange was forced to close its doors. No money was harmed. Pathetically, and I mean pathetically, Rage lost out to Limp Bizkit at the 2000 MTV VMAs. I suppose that gives an idea to the mark they made. Hey everyone, if there are any stories that you want to bring to our attention, whether it is the local level, collegiate level, professional level, national level, that you think would be worthy of a story and us covering, there are so many hours in a day and only so much we see. Submit them to me. Get at me on Twitter, on Instagram, and TikTok. Send me a DM, send me a tweet, what have you. We appreciate it. Hope you have a great day.